Welcome to Off Panel. Yo everybody, welcome to Off Panel. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the New York Times best-selling author of the Rap Yearbook and a staff writer at The Ringer. It's Shea Serrano. Thanks for coming on, Shea.
What up, dude?
So, I just have to ask, do you, does it ever not, is it ever really weird to hear your name and New York Times bestseller right next to each other? Does that ever get normal?
Nah, it's weird every single time someone says it.
I imagine. So I'm a big fan of your writing, and I really wanted to kind of dig into how you do your thing. And one thing that's interesting to me is how you became a writer out of necessity, but you seemingly picked up on it really fast. In comics, they often tell people, prominent creators, writers, artists, things like that, tell people the best way to get better is to just make comics. And the same thing is true for writing in my work. How important do you think it is to just get the reps if you're an aspiring writer?
It's super important. You can't get any better if you don't practice. I mean, I'm sure there are some people who are just naturally good at writing, but I don't think most people are. I know I wasn't. When I first started writing, I didn't have any idea how to write an article. And I don't mean that like in this coy, like clever way. I mean, I literally didn't understand where to put commas or how to like put quotations around something. I didn't know what went inside that, or like I didn't understand any of that until I just sat down and learned how to do it. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I couldn't have gotten good if I didn't write all the time.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same thing for me. I didn't have any writing background when I started, so it was kind of like all learning on the process. I could write an email and I could have a conversation and I could try to turn that conversation into an article. But as far as the process, it was all learning on the go. It's an interesting process.
Yeah, it was very confusing for me, very hard.
I read an interview with you where you said, quote unquote, the struggle is the fun part when you were asked for advice for young people who are kind of figuring things out. And that's right. That's definitely true for writers, because I really feel like that struggle we were talking about where you're kind of figuring things out helps you refine your voice. How long do you feel it took you to kind of figure things out once you got into writing?
Figure out like what I wanted my writing to sound like, or just figure out
just kind of all of it. I mean, like how you, because it's like I feel like you probably had an idea as to like what you enjoyed in writing and what you enjoyed in stories and stuff like that, but how to refine that into like an article, I guess.
Oh shoot, I don't even remember how long that took. It took a good little while. It took a bunch of time spent with my editors at the Houston Press, which is one of the first places. Like that was the first main place I worked. It was the first actual place I worked that had editors who were trying to like make me a better writer. Before then, it was little tiny places that they just want you to turn something in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that time spent at the press, which was like a real newspaper with real employees and a real editor-in-chief and a real music editor who wanted me to be better because it was going to make their paper better. It sort of happened over that time. So it was several years of learning that stuff. And there were always people along the way who would give me like this advice or that advice that I thought was super helpful. And you just sort of put all that stuff together, and after a while you realize, oh shit, I understand how this works now.
Yeah. I imagine at this point working with people like Sean Fennessy and everybody else at The Ringer and previously at Grantland is like rocket fuel.
Yeah, those guys are incredible. Any of the people that work there, I always feel like are already smarter than I am. So really all my job is just shut up and pay attention to what they're saying or pay attention to what they're doing. And there you go.
Yeah. So one thing I really love about your work is how intertwined it is with art. I'm a huge comic book fan, but like reading something like the Rap Yearbook where you work with artist Arturo Torres, or even like, you work with him on your newsletter, basketball and other things, like that stuff is awesome because it marries writing and art in a way that really like connects with me. Most of your stuff has original art rather than just stuff grabbed from Google Images. Why is it that you like marrying your writing with art? And is it kind of impossible for you to imagine your work without an active visual element like that?
Yeah, it is now. Art has been, I don't know, it's just a thing that I've liked ever since I was a kid. I'm pretty good at drawing myself. Mm-hmm. So, my dad is really good. It sort of got passed down to me. And it was just a thing that I've always liked to do way before writing. Like ever since I was a kid, that was the thing I was always doing. So it just sort of made sense to me when I started writing. I want to have that part in there. And then after I did the coloring book, which was in 2013, did the rap coloring book, that was when I realized that other places wanted that too. They just weren't doing it yet. Because before then, I'd not done any art stuff. I never even considered the idea of putting those two things together. And after the coloring book happened, then I had all of these places hitting me up. Places who I had tried to pitch that wouldn't respond. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden were like, hey, can you do this for us? Can you do that for us? We have this idea, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, it's always sort of been there for me. It's always been a thing that I liked or wanted to do. And it just makes sense, especially for some of the stuff that I'm writing, which is usually like kind of goofy or playful. Like it just makes it more interesting to read if I make a joke about whatever, and then there's a picture of it. It becomes real. It feels a little more serious.
Yeah, sure.
Or like I spent a little more time investing in it, and then people usually respond to stuff when they can tell that you were working hard on it.
Yeah, it would be a pretty hard Photoshop to do to, like, I don't know, imagine Russell Westbrook as a xenomorph from the Aliens movies. But,
yeah.
But yeah, that was one thing I thought was really awesome is like until I started researching this, because I came in on the rap yearbook and basketball and other things and everything like that. I'd never actually seen the rapper coloring and activity book before. And I had no idea. I'd seen your tweets where you'd have drawings and everything like that. I had no idea you're an illustrator. Like, I think that's really awesome because when I was growing up, I wanted to be a comic book artist, and I'm horrifically envious of your skills as an illustrator. I imagine, like, in some ways that, I don't know, do you feel like the ability to tell a story with visuals kind of changes the way you think about writing at all, or is that just kind of completely separate left brain, right brain things for you?
I think it helps when if you know how to do that. It helps when you're putting your articles together. It just makes it, for me, it makes it feel a little more round.
Yeah.
Makes it feel a little more complete if I can have that part of it. So, yeah, a lot of times when I'm thinking of stuff that I want to write, I'm figuring out what sort of art is going to go with it that can make it better or worse.
So I'm curious, like, you've worked with Arturo Torres. You recently, like, made Ryan Simpson's year by, like, blowing him up with the FOH Army, which was amazing, I have to admit. What do you look for in art? Like, what is your kind of, I guess, I don't want to say aesthetic because that seems super pretentious, but just what do you dig when it comes to art?
I don't think I'm smart enough to explain what it is I like about certain art. It's like music for me. It's like
it's something you feel.
You listen to a song and you understand. Yeah, does it make something happen inside your chest? Mm-hmm. And if it does, then you like it, and if it doesn't, then you don't. So, like with Ryan Simpson's work, yeah, I saw a picture that he had done, and it was like, oh, yo, this is cool as shit. Let me try and buy this. And then I went to his website, and it was like all cool shit. Mm-hmm. Oh my god, this is great. So I wanted to help him out. And then a big reason I wanted to help him out was the picture that I saw that he had drawn was this picture of the Jokers. It was Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger and Jared Leto all sort of, it's like three portraits of them mushed together. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was really cool. So when I asked him if I could buy it from him, he very easily could have been like, yo, yeah, just send me $50 mm-hmm. and I'll send you a print. But he was like, no, I don't have the rights to the Jokers. That was just an illustration I did for the Ringer. Mm-hmm. So I can't sell that to you. Like, I don't want to get in trouble.
Right.
I'll just send you a copy if you pay for the shipping. And I knew when he told me that, like that's a good dude right there. Because we did the same thing with the with the coloring book, like you can just draw the pictures of anybody you want and put it out there. If you want, like that's a thing you can do because a bunch of people have done it. But we wanted to get permission from everybody because we didn't want to, like, we don't want to be a dick about it.
Yeah.
So So when he said that, I was like this is a guy who I feel like just off of that interaction, him and I must feel the same about a bunch of stuff philosophically. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I went to, like, that was helpful for one, but then two, the art was just dope. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, man. You just look at it and you like it or you don't.
Yeah, that's one of the tough things. Like I've spent a lot of time reviewing comics and books with art in them, and it's like it's kind of tough to put into words exactly how you feel about it. You're like, it makes, like, I feel like a certain energy of it or from it, and I connect with it. And
yeah,
when you put that in writing, or when you put that into words, it's hard to make that sound exactly how it feels. But so I totally get you there. So as I said before, Arturo Torres is your teammate on a lot of these projects. I'm curious, like for the Rap Yearbook and for basketball and other things, where did you discover him, and what made him such a good complement to what you were doing?
I found him. He had done a flyer for this rap group that I listened to. It's a small group out of Dallas. They're called the Outfit Texas, and I follow them on Twitter to, like, get all their music and shit. And they posted a picture of a flyer for some event they had that he had drawn. And it was like, as soon as I saw it, I said, this is exactly the type of feeling I want for the Rap Yearbook. Because I was already working on the book. And I knew, originally, I was supposed to draw all the pictures for it.
Oh, my
God. When I turned in the proposal, I was supposed to write the book and draw the pictures. And I ended up waiting too long to get started on the book. They give you, like, a year to write it. I waited until the 11th month, the 10th month before I got started. So I knew I wasn't going to have time to do that. So I was already looking for an illustrator, and I saw his stuff, and it's like, it just jumped out at me. You know, It just felt really cool when I looked at it. So yeah, I hit him up. It turned out he lives in Dallas, which is just a couple hours from Houston, which was good for me. And then I was excited when I found out he was a Mexican dude, because there just aren't a lot of Mexicans out there doing work like this. So that was another big plus for me. But yeah, it fit. The way that he draws, to me, feels like the way that I write, which is a little herky-jerky and not exactly polished, but you get what he's trying to do.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And with the Rap Yearbook, didn't you just celebrate its 1-year anniversary?
Yeah, last week.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Thanks.
So for the Rap Yearbook, one thing I'm really curious about it is because, like, you read through it, and each year had roughly the same format, and even if the guts, within it were slightly different, like you had a kind of like a framework. I don't want to say a template, because that kind of makes it seem like, I don't know, like you were filling out some sort of like Microsoft Word file that was predefined or something like that. But I imagine with the project of that length, like figuring out a structure was crazy important. I've written some long articles, and even those you kind of have to figure it out, like the way it's going to lay out and everything beforehand. Otherwise, you're totally hosed. Was that something you had to do? Did you have to figure out a framework of sorts for each chapter to kind of unlock the process?
Yeah, that's exactly what we did, and that's exactly what, the reason that we did it. It was hard for me. I never written a book before. The coloring book, it was just pictures I drew, and I drew all those pictures in like a week over spring break, because I was teaching at the time. So I just fucking cranked them out. Then, literally in a week, I drew 50 something pictures. It wasn't a problem. But for the book, was totally different, because you have to do all this research, and you've got to know this and you've got to know that and how this fits with that. It was really overwhelming to look at that. It felt like I was standing in front of the ocean, and I had to like get across it, but I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we settled on a template. I knew how long the book was supposed to be. I knew it was supposed to be like 70 something thousand words. And I knew how many chapters I needed to get done, so I just fucking divided it. Yeah. I got this many chapters and this many words. Every chapter needs to be about 2,000 words. Every chapter needs to have this part. It needs to have an intro. It needs to have a piece of big art. It needs to have a chart. And let me just fill in the pieces around that. So, yeah, once we figured out that part, it was easy to start cranking through it. And the same thing happened with the basketball book. Once we figured out what we wanted to put in the chapter,
Mm-hmm.
then it just sort of started flowing after that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at those big things, and like you were saying, it's like you're staring at the ocean. It's like how could I fill this ocean with words? This is impossible to imagine. Yeah,
Yeah. I didn't like it at all.
that you have an unbelievable amount of references in it. It's an amazing book, but like I just have to ask, like, how much time did you spend watching like documentaries, old episodes of Oprah, reading biographies, old interviews, everything? Like, was that just like an unbelievable amount of the process of doing that book?
Yes, it was. It's way more work than you are anticipating, than I was anticipating anyway. Because when I pitched the book, or when I wrote the proposal for the book, you have to do sample chapters. So I did 2 sample chapters,
Mm-hmm.
but I picked songs that I already knew the history of, and I already knew most of the information I needed. So I was able to crank those ones out in like a day, or 2 chapters in a day. It wasn't a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I was anticipating the rest of them were going to be like that, but yeah, I realized real quick I didn't know anything about rap outside of like 3 of the years that rap has been around.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a lot of research, a lot of like just searching out for 1 or 2 little things, and it was not easy, man. It was super sucky.
Well, I mean, it resulted in an amazing book and everything. But that one thing I really loved is the fact that when I was growing up, I always I'm a white guy from Anchorage, Alaska, so this is probably like I'm not exactly the target audience typically, I imagine, but I grew up listening to NWA and to Wu-Tang Clan, and like the Wu-Tang Clan chapter was amazing for me because I never knew that was why 36 Chambers was 36 Chambers. Like that whole thing just blew my mind. And it makes sense, especially given the way that the RZA thinks. But like, I love getting that level of detail because it's like, I don't know, it both helps you understand like the minds behind the music and also just like the history and just like how like all these different pockets of people in the medium kind of or in the genre like form up and everything. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, it was always fun to learn that stuff. All these guys have such cool origin stories. You start to dig into them, and they're all interesting for a different reason.
Yeah. I have to ask, like, I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore rap fan, but in general, like, I enjoy rap. I grew up listening to it, and I still listen to it now. But, like, I'm curious as to the intent for it. Is the intent for the Rap Yearbook to be kind of like a Bible for hardcore rap fans, something even for rap newbies, or kind of a bit of both?
I would hope that it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be, secretly, it's like it's supposed to be the evolution of rap. Like that's what the book was originally supposed to be about. Let's talk about all the changes that have happened in rap.
Mm-hmm.
But we needed a cool way to do it. We needed a way that was going to be interesting that people would look. Because I really enjoy rap a whole bunch, but I'm not gonna sit there and read a fucking history of rap book.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I needed it to be presented in a different way. So yeah, hopefully there was some stuff in there that even people who are super into rap didn't know about, but there were also, broad enough ideas that people who had never paid any attention to rap were able to keep up.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever read Ed Piscor's Hip Hop Family Tree? It's like a comic series.
Yeah, I read a few of them.
Yeah, it is like they're kind of like in the same realm and everything like that, but it is way different when you're reading a history versus reading like the Rap Yearbook, where it's more about like you're saying, like the evolution and kind of how like like what was defining for each year and everything like that. It's kind of a cool yin and yang there.
Right.
So one thing I think is really great that you do, from what I read, is you keep a really tight schedule when it comes to work, and that's something I super envy because like I spend way too much time slacking, and I would say that I'm fairly successful at what I do, but at the same time, like I think being more regimented is something that everybody could do. Why do you think keeping a tight ship as a writer is like super important for what you do?
For me, it was because it's so easy to just waste a whole bunch of time and pretend like you're working. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? When I very first started writing, when I was teaching still, I had to be on a schedule just because I only had X amount of hours. So I couldn't just sit there all day and do nothing. I wasn't gonna get any work. I wasn't gonna get paid. I wasn't gonna do a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, I needed that because I don't know. That's just how, for me, that's how I get stuff done. Is I know if you tell me I have 3 hours to finish a thing, then I'm going to finish it in those 3 hours. If you tell me I have 12 hours to finish it, then I'm going to finish it in 12 hours. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't set any time limits, if I don't set any personal deadlines, then I'm just going to, there's too much dead time in there, and it's just not good for me.
Oh yeah. Well, and even beyond that, it's like, in 2016, there's so many opportunities for distraction between like, Twitter and, like before we were talking, I was reading this article about Kevin Durant that the Rolling Stone just released. And it's like, I if I was at my desk at work and I discovered that, I was like, all of a sudden 30 minutes is gone instead of working.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, people don't really think about that. People think about like, days is like a free flowing thing. And if you kind of regiment it a bit, it allows you a lot more time for efficiency, I guess, and a lot more time to get your stuff done, and freeing up time to do those other things later, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, after a while, you know how long a thing should take you to do.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I just need to, I need to finish this thing by 11 a.m. I need to finish this by 3 p.m. and I need to finish this by 2 a.m. Like, I need those in there.
This is a tangent I didn't really plan on going on, but I'm curious. You've mentioned teaching a couple times, and like that was what you did for quite some time until you had to supplement with writing. Like, what do you feel like the teaching experience, like, how did that help you kind of, I don't know, both like how has that helped you with your writing, and also like how did that kind of like change you as a person? Like, I know it's kind of a broad question, but I'm really fascinated by the teaching element.
I think if you look at how it affected the way that I write, it gave me a better idea of, anytime you write an article, you usually have an idea in your head that you want to get across. So you're trying to explain something.
Mm-hmm.
That's generally why you write. And that's the whole thing you're doing with teaching. Before you start a lesson, you say, okay, by the end of this, I need for the kids to know this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with writing. By the end of this article, I need for the reader to know this thing. So it just helped me, I taught for 9 years. It helped me do that. Like, when you read an article, by the time you get to the end of something I've written, there will have been a point that was made. And I think teaching was really valuable in helping me do that, because when I first started teaching, I wasn't any good at that either.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was teaching this one lesson on like the fucking laws of motion. It was my first year there, and I was doing this. We were going over the second law, and I was totally lost. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't understand anything. I'm like standing. I'm realizing I'm standing like on a cabinet, dropping a parachute man down. Like, I just have no idea what's going on. I just realized all of a sudden, like, what the fuck am I doing? And one of the girls in the class, this little girl named Gabby, she raised her hand, and I said, "What's up, dude?" And she said, "Is this the first time you've ever done this?" And I was like, God damn it. Like, I did. And she was right. It was the first time I'd done it. I don't understand it. But by the time I got to the end of my teaching career, 9 years later, I was able to just sort of burn through all that stuff. I knew what worked. I knew what didn't work. I knew how to get a point across, and I knew what points needed to be hit, and what points I could just sort of let energy fill in the blank spots. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with writing now. I'm pretty good when I have to explain stuff. That's why the rap yearbook worked. Each chapter there was a point that I needed to get across, mm-hmm. and I made sure to hit that on multiple occasions without making it obvious that I was doing that. And that's really the main way that I think it helps me with being a writer. And then just another thing was I figured out over that time how to make people understand that I cared about a thing, and get that idea across as well. And that's really, really helpful too.
I have a friend who just got into teaching, and she worked with me I work at an advertising agency, and she worked there for like 5 years and then moved on to teaching. And I've talked to her several times since she got into it, and she's like every day is like learning a ton of stuff. It's just like, I think at first she was horrified of it because I think she thought the kids were going to see right through her and realize that she'd never done this before. But I think it's just kind of like it's like a mutual contract. Everybody's figuring things out while you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, if the kids know that you care about them, then they'll let you, they'll let you work your way through it.
Yeah, yeah. So one of my favorite random articles from the past couple of months was your piece on Antonio Brown and twerking as a touchdown celebration, which was amazing. And I read that and immediately shared it with all of my friends. And I think it's just it's such a hilarious article. But I think it's funny that you say that, like, you're trying to, like, when you're teaching, you're like learning how to express ideas better. And it's amazing how I don't know. I'm always amazed by the way you think about things. Like, you read like the articles like that, or like the article that went up, I think it was 2 days ago, yesterday, the Kawhi Leonard iOS Leonard one. And it's like, it's ways that people don't really think about stuff. And so I'm curious, like, when you're writing, what do you find to be more difficult as a writer? Conceptualizing the articles or actually writing them?
Conceptualizing. Coming up with the stuff that you're going to write about is definitely harder.
Yeah.
Once you have the general idea, then it's just filling in the blanks.
Yeah.
You're getting the idea across, so that part's easy because you know what you're trying to do. But figuring out what that idea is definitely way harder for me, anyway.
No, I agree. I mean, like, I've been writing for about 7 years now, and one of the things I feel like I'm pretty good at is conceptualizing articles. And like, a lot of times I've had people reach out and ask me, like, how exactly you do it, and it's kind of a hard thing to express. It's just like, I don't know, you kind of just have to, I don't know, a lot of the articles I come up with, I'm not really actively thinking about. It's just something that's like, it's an idle thought. And next thing you know, you're blowing it out and becoming a bigger thing. And I don't know, do you have a process for it? Or is it just kind of that you're just like watching Antonio Brown shake his ass, and then that happens?
Every once in a while, it'll happen like that. The Antonio Brown thing, he shook his ass, and then I was like, oh, this is funny. It's funny that this man just did this, because I've never seen it before. And I knew there were going to be a bunch of people that were going to, like, write a quick little thing about it because he got flagged for it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I knew nobody was going to spend any time writing a thing. So I did it. But usually, now for me, it's the opposite. Like, I have to sit there and I spend a lot of time trying to figure out what it is I'm going to write. I have a day built into every week, usually on Thursday, where I've already written all the stuff I need to write for the week, and I'm preparing for the following week. Mm. So that's the whole day, is me just looking for stuff to write about, figuring out what it is I want to write about. And that's the whole day on 10 hours of doing that until I figure out the 3 things I want to try to do. You know what I'm saying?
Is there like a formal process? Like, do you actually have like a whiteboard or something like that? Or is it just like, you're kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks?
I'm usually just doing that. Yeah. I'm going through like different news sites or Hollywood Reporter or IMDb or whatever, looking to see, okay, what new stuff is coming out this week? What new stuff is coming out next week? How can I write about this in a way that nobody else has? Mm-hmm. And that's really all it is. Like, people ask me that question a whole bunch. And for me, there's no like trick or easy way around it. It's like, I have to put that time in. I have to sit there for those hours mm-hmm. and figure out what I can do. And every once in a while, it'll just sort of happen, like the Antonio Brown thing, or I wrote a thing about Denzel Washington and tables, which was like, it was a really stupid article, but I felt good about it because I knew nobody else had written it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that one just happened. I was watching what's that movie? When he kills everybody, The Equalizer. Oh, yeah. I was watching that one, and there's the scene where he's sitting down with the main bad guy. And I was like, I don't know why. I just remembered the Training Day scene when he's sitting at the table, and then the other scene when he's sitting at the table. I was like, oh shit, like, there's an article. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It was like that.
You gotta put the time in.
It was like that moment at the end of Usual Suspects where the cop drops his mug, and at the bottom it says Kobayashi, except for at the bottom for you it mm-hmm. said Denzel and Tables.
Yeah, basically.
Are you ever kind of stunned by how, like, accepting everybody at the Ringer is of, I don't know, coming to them with an article about the upgrade to Kawhi Leonard's iOS or OS system?
Yeah, I'm always surprised that they let me write about the stuff that they let me write about. It makes me feel good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what other places that would let me or not let me do that, but they do, and I appreciate it a whole bunch.
Yeah. I imagine, like, kind of like with the Rap Yearbook, you have to spend a lot of time kind of consuming media just so you can, like you're saying, you spend a lot of time, like, reading through the internet, going to Hollywood Reporter, going to whatever website, just trying to see what stories are out there so you can find something for you to write about. I imagine you have a lot of time where you just have to just be consuming media.
Yeah, that's usually what I do that whole day on Thursday. Is, that's all I'm doing.
So your next book is a basketball book, and from what I understand, it's coming in fall 2017. And I'm sure you can't say much of anything about it, but for this project, did this stem just basically from your love of your sport, or is it more of just like an opportunity arising?
It was an opportunity.
Yeah.
But when the Rap Yearbook took off, then I knew after that bigger checks were coming to write a book. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I got a real small check for that one.
Mm-hmm.
And when it exploded and people realized, like, yo, this guy can sell books. Let's, have some serious conversation with him. That's all it was. Writing for me, I always feel bad when people ask me, like, questions about how to be a writer or how to be an author or how to get on the New York Times bestseller list. All these, because it's usually people who grew up with, like, this love of writing in their heart, or it's like a passion for them. But for me, it's never been a romantic thing or a romantic idea. It was just a job that I was able to figure out how to do and get paid for more than I was getting paid for teaching. So it just made sense to move over to that part. You know what I'm saying? So, like, for the second book, for the basketball book, it wasn't that I just loved basketball so much. It was that they were going to give me a bunch of money to write a book, and I could pick whatever I wanted to write about. So basketball just made the most sense because it's, I want to write about a thing that I would at least enjoy researching.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, like I said earlier, your story, your background in writing is like you came up because of necessity, right? It's like your wife got pregnant and you had to find another way to bring in additional income, and everybody comes from different places, and it's like I actually think it's pretty amazing that you. It's kind of like you got really analytical about it and you figured out the best way to approach kind of the writing game, so to speak. It's like, how could I make this work for me? And you actually figured a way out.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was always like, it was basically a math formula for me. I knew I had 20 hours a week, let's say, or 20 hours a month left over after I was teaching. That's how much extra time I had where I was just sort of wasting, I felt like. So, okay, I know I've got 20 hours this month, and I know I need to make X amount of money. So how do I get to that point? And when I first started out anyway, I was trying to make $500 a month. I remember that was my first goal. And so for me, that meant I had 20 hours where I needed to make $500. So that meant I need to make $25 an hour, basically, is what I was trying to do writing. So any of the assignments that I was pitching or accepting or not accepting, it was like, well, working on this thing, will it equal out to be $25 an hour for me? And if it does, great, then I'll take the assignment. And if it doesn't, then I won't.
Yeah.
And, the further along I got, after I was able to do $500 a month pretty regularly, it's like, okay, let me see if I can't do $1,000. So then I just stopped taking any assignments that wouldn't get me to $1,000, which was $50 an hour. And then once I was able to do that, I was like, well, shit, let me try $2,000 a month. Let me try $3,000 a month. And I just kept, working my way up that way. But it was always a formula in place. This is the job I'm going to take. This is the job I'm not going to take. And to me, it didn't matter what a publication was. It didn't matter who was doing what. It just mattered, does it fit into this money formula that I've sort of worked out? And that's all it was, man.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's kind of the opposite. A lot of, especially today, like a lot of people are quote unquote writing for exposure and things like that. And it's like, I mean, even places like Huffington Post, the vast majority, or from what I understand, the vast majority of their writers aren't even paid. And it's like, a lot of writers are told that they should pay their dues or things like that. And it's like, You went in and you're like, I know exactly what I need to do, and I'm gonna do it. And you didn't really accept any substitute, which is amazing.
Nah, fuck that writing for free nonsense. It doesn't. People ask me that all the time. I get these emails, and it's somebody like, "Yeah, I really want to be a writer because I don't want to have like an actual job." Blah blah blah. Yeah, like, yo, you're never gonna make it. Like, I'm just gonna tell you up front. You can't approach it like that. It can't be a hobby if you want it to be your job. You know, you're not gonna fucking go to McDonald's and work for free because you want to work at McDonald's. Like, that's not how it should work. So no, don't write for free. People are not going to take you seriously if you don't take yourself seriously. I think most of the big things that have happened in my life, in my professional life, came after I told somebody no.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They hit you up and say, "Hey, can you do this for us?" Oh no, I can't do that. That's you're offering me $5,000, but I need $10,000. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And then they just come back. Oh, okay. Well, here's what you want. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it doesn't make any sense for you to spend all your time writing for free, hoping that somebody's just going to decide to pay you. That's not how it works.
Well, and you establish your value as a free writer as opposed to a $5,000 writer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like if the guy that cuts my yard, if he had shown up and was like, "Hey, can I just cut your yard for free?" Then yeah, of course. I'm not going to offer to pay you if you're offering me to do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
I know
it doesn't work.
I know a lot of writers and artists who basically they've said basically the same thing. It's like they kind of unlock something once they said no for the first time, because then it's like in a weird way, no is establishing your value also, because they're just like, oh, he's not this type of guy, he's this type of guy, and it's like, I don't know, it reestablishes your identity as like kind of what you would accept and what you wouldn't. Yeah,
that's exactly what it does. You got to say no to some people to get what you want.
Yeah. So I to talk a little bit more about basketball, I'm from Anchorage, Alaska. You're a born and raised Texan who's a Spurs fan. We're both huge Reggie Miller fans. I'm really curious, like, what was it about Reggie that spoke to you as a young fan? Like, what made you connect with him?
He was, shoot, I don't even know. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but I know I watched him play, and he was not like anybody that the Spurs had. Mm-hmm. The Spurs have always been a very Popovichian team. Even before Popovich was coach, like we had, Bob Hill or whatever, John Luca. We had these guys coaching, and they were always looking for, it seemed like, certain types of players. So for me, I'm growing up and I'm watching the Spurs, and that's the team that my dad is telling me we're going to like. And like, oh, cool, we've got David Robinson. He's this super Christian superstar. But then Reggie Miller showed up on my TV one day, and I'm watching him play, and he's first of all, he's just a skinny dude. Mm-hmm. He's not like this overwhelming physical force like David Robinson was, but he's out there and he's just running around and just yelling at everyone like a madman. And you can see, like, you don't have a microphone on him, but you can see that he's talking shit to people. you can see it happening. And that just spoke to me. I didn't know you could play basketball like that. I didn't know you could do that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Here's this guy who he was just this funny looking. He's got big old ears and he's got this jagged teeth, and he's real skinny. And I looked at him and I saw me. I saw a version of me, a way better version of me, and it just made sense. So after that, I was like, this was probably in the early '90s when I noticed him the first time, maybe like on a game on CBS or NBC or something. But yeah, I watched him play the one time, and I just fell in love. He's legit the first basketball player that I ever loved as a kid. And I think maybe a part of that was because he wasn't on the Spurs. He was like the opposite of what my dad was telling me to like. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he was the guy, man. He meant a whole bunch to me.
Yeah, it is the first game, or the first time I remember like falling in love with him was I was always a basketball fan. I played basketball growing up, and I was watching the playoffs, and it was the Knicks and Pacers in '93, and it was the choke game. It was Reggie scored 25 points in the fourth quarter and then flashed a choke sign at Spike Lee, and I just loved that because, like you're saying, it was like there was kind of like two spectrums. There was either the guys who were kind of super serious, like the Spurs, and like business like, or there was the guys who would just like beat the crap out of each other. And I liked that Reggie was kind of like, I don't know, he was like a little kid compared to a lot of them because he weighed like 50 pounds less than a lot of people. And he would still go out there and talk trash and shoot threes in their face and, you know, let them know about it and everything. And there was something about him that I just connected with. And did you know that one of my favorite random things about Reggie Miller is the Pacers PR guy. One of their pregame ritual things was he would scream obscenities in his face.
Yeah.
I thought that was like the funniest thing. It's like that's the mindset he needs to be in going into the game. It's such a amazing Reggie thing.
Yeah, he's the best, man. He's so much. Another thing I liked about him was he was never like the best player in the league. Mm-hmm. He was always sort of punching up at those guys, and I feel like in my life that's sort of the role that I am. I've never been the best at anything. I'm just sort of yelling at the guys who are.
Yeah. I actually I was curious because I know you love pettiness. That's like one of the things that you talk about on Twitter and everything. Reggie, I don't know if would you say Reggie was a petty player?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the Spurs. Your guy Tim Duncan retired this past offseason. So this will be like I think it's amazing. Like for Spurs fans, this is like the first time this entire century Duncan's not going to be part of your life. How weird is the prospect of seeing the Spurs without Duncan?
It's going to be not that weird actually.
Yeah.
Because
he was only playing like 15 minutes last year, right?
Yeah, and more than that, it wasn't a thing that snuck up on anybody.
Right.
Like everybody knew it's eventually coming. We're getting close. It happens. Like it's like if you've got a sick relative, an old sick aunt or grandma or something, like she's going down. Mm-hmm. And when it happens, there's almost a sense of relief, like that it's over with, and you don't have to think about it anymore, and you can just live with it. So, it's not going to be so weird for me, I don't think.
Yeah, and it seems like he's going to be sticking around the team to some certain degree. I mean, I know Pop basically said that he has like a place there that he can determine what is, and like I know he's already been to practices and everything, so he'll be a part of the team. Yeah,
he'll be around. He'll just be this ghost sort of floating in the background.
I do have to admit, like even going back to that awesome Clippers and Spurs series, I think it was 2 years ago. I kind of felt like I felt bad. It was kind of like when you see an injured dog. That's a horrible analogy, but I mean, you could tell his legs were just killing him, and he was basically just willing himself to like try to push them past that Game 7 against the Clippers. And I was just like, there was a part of me that I love Duncan. He's just a model player. He's like amazing to watch, but I just kind of felt like he needed to retire. He just seemed like he was done.
Nah, I disagree. I think he could have played forever. Because if you look at his per 36 rating, like the numbers are all the same. Yeah. They didn't drop down. And there were plays where he did like these. In that Clipper series, there was one where he blocked a Blake Griffin shot at the end of the game to win the game.
Yeah.
And it's like who blocks Blake Griffin when he's trying to tear the rim off? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Tim Duncan does, and he's 187 years old. So.
Is he older or less old than Pharrell?
He's got to be. They're probably the same. They're probably born in the same hospital.
Probably
on the same day.
Yeah, I have to admit that blew my mind when in the Rap Yearbook when you said that Pharrell was on that Rex and Effect song. I was like, how is that possible? That song was like when I was 7.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay, so the last real question I have for you before I go into 5 quick questions, just kind of about you. I want to ask about the FOH Army. They're one of the great bastions of like goodness and generosity on an often negative forum. I mean, like Twitter, people are talking all the time about how it's a super negative place, but I think it's amazing how you can have things like for the 1-year anniversary, you have this crazy Amazon sales bonanza where like all of a sudden the Rap Yearbook goes into I think last time I saw it was like near the top 40. And then past that, you have people just like ultralight beaming books for each other just because, I mean, like people from like, I could ultralight beam a book for somebody in like Puerto Rico because I feel like it. And that's just kind of a thing that your fans do. Why do you think that is? And was like the first time somebody was like, hey, I want to buy a book for one of your Twitter followers. Was that like a little mind blowing for you?
That was very mind blowing. Yes. But I think by the time that happened, people on Twitter had already done enough, like really incredible things that it was not as surprising as maybe as it should have been.
Yeah.
Because I figured out pretty quickly once they once they sort of started buying up all the books, that they were going to do some, I don't know, some pretty crazy things. I don't know how to explain how it happened. Somebody gave it a name, and I know after it got a name is when it really took off. I didn't come up with the FOH Army. Somebody else did. I didn't come up with the ultralight beam. Somebody else did. It was like just people putting these ideas out there, and once you give a thing a name, it's easy for people to get excited about it. I think that's a big part of the reason. Anytime we're going to do like we talked about Ryan Simpson earlier.
Yeah.
If I was just like, hey, everybody, we're going to go buy the art, it would have done a little bit of stuff, but not too much. But as soon as we gave it a name, we started calling it the Art Party, and people could write out Art Party.
Yeah.
They were excited about that. Then it just sort of took off. So, yeah, I don't know how to explain exactly what the FOH Army is. It sounds even ridiculous when you say it out loud or put it into the real world. It feels weird. But all I know is a lot of people ask me about them all the time. I get invited to go do like talks at companies because they want me to talk to their employees about how to build up a thing like this. And yeah, it's weird. I never know what to say. I always tell those people no because I don't know how to stand in front of a room of people and just be like, I don't know. I just told these people on the internet I was going to fight them if they didn't buy the book. And they bought the book. You know, it doesn't make any sense to anybody else who's outside of that. It makes sense to everybody on Twitter who's a part of it, but outside of it, if I'm trying to explain it, I sound like an idiot.
Well, it wasn't really something you planned, right? I mean, it was just something that happened. It's like, I know that you wanted social media to be a big part of the promotion of like the rap coloring book and the rap yearbook and everything like that, but it's not like you can go in, if you plan systematically to do that on social media, I feel like it maybe could work, but I don't feel like it would work as well. I feel like the kind of organic nature of it is part of the reason why it's as successful as it is.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too. You have to put the time in. You can't just show up on Twitter one day and you're never spending any time on there and then be like, hey, everybody buy my book, because nobody knows who you are.
Right.
If you pick anybody who has bought the book out of the FOH Army, it sounds ridiculous every time I say it. But if you pick somebody out of there and you're like, yo, tell me what you know about this guy, they're probably going to have 5 or 6 things that they already know. They're going to know what my kids look like. They're going to know how many kids I have. They're going to know what my wife looks like. They're going to know how I feel about this rapper, how I feel about this basketball team. Like, they're going to know those things because I put that time in, and we spent that time together. So I think that's really all it is. You build up this sort of karma or currency with people, this goodwill currency, and then that's how you spend it, is when you ask them to do a thing for you.
Yeah. And I like that the name kind of came up organically and you didn't give it to it. It's like you, like NBA superstars, like whenever they give themselves their own name, it just doesn't feel right. Whenever they get one, it's like, that's just kind of how it is. It's kind of like, I really like Slim Reaper. Like, that's a name I really like for Kevin Durant, but I'm trying to remember what his nickname he really liked. Although I do like The Process. I like Joel Embiid naming himself The Process. That's pretty good.
Right. Yeah.
So 5 quick questions to finish the podcast, just random stuff. First question I wanted to ask, I was watching Jack Reacher last night and this came up in my mind. Who would you say would win in a fight, Jack Reacher or John Wick?
John Wick.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right. Okay, so second question. I'm going to San Antonio for Christmas. I know you don't live there anymore, but if there's one thing I should do or see or eat or whatever while I'm there, what would you suggest?
There's a place called Mendez Cafe.
Yep.
Off of Southwest Military. Mm-hmm. They're only open for breakfast, and they're only open, they're usually closed for all the holidays. So I don't know what day you would be down there, but definitely go to that place. It's the best food in Texas.
Nice. I will definitely hit it up. All right, if you could only watch one non-Spurs, non-Warriors NBA team this year, who would it be?
It would be the Thunder.
Yes. I kind of thought it would be because my rap yearbook has the Vengeance Russell bookmark in it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about the unleashing of Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
All right, let's say, next question. Let's say you were going to try to make the best action movie possible in 2016. if you could choose from any of the actors active right now, what star would you start with?
I would start with Ronda Rousey.
Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's pretty badass.
Because I want an old style action movie where they're taking themselves very seriously, but they're doing like super dumb shit. And I think she's really good at that. Mm-hmm. She's really good at pretending to be serious when she's very clearly putting on a show.
Yeah. That is a very good choice. Last question. It's a deep pull for people who aren't in Texas. What's your stance on the Spurs commercials for HEB? Do you love them or do you hate them?
Oh, I love them. I've been a big fan of those commercials for decades, it feels like.
Yeah, they're amazing. And I do, that was one thing is like, I was trying to think, did Kawhi ever smile in one of those? Were they practicing eye emotions there?
He has smiled in just a couple of them, real quickly. Yeah. Mostly the new ones.
Mostly the new ones when he's engaging the test mode for the new operating system.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much, Shea. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat.
All right, homie.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with writer Shea Serrano. You can find Shea on Twitter at Shea Serrano and his work at The Ringer and the Rap Yearbook with Arturo Torres. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow it on Twitter at sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating and review while you're at it. Also, my comics adjacent newsletter called The Crossover is in the middle of its first season. Make sure to subscribe at bit.ly/The Crossover newsletter if you want more writing from me. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for a new episode.